So in order to be a team player, what you have to understand is we used to say this before every game. It's kind of funny, but it was to get the point across. We'd always say, let the we talk about chopping wood. Let the choppers chop. Let the pilers pile. If you're a singer, sing. If you're a dancer, dance. Just meaning, don't get your role reversal mixed up. And what the chopping and the piling is, the chopping, the guys that chop the wood are the guys that are doing like that grunt work. The guys that's right. So you're in the corners, you're making blocking shots, you're doing the tough shit. The guys that pile the wood are the guys that are scoring the goals. But when a chopper wants to become a piler and a piler wants to become a chopper, that doesn't necessarily work that way. You got to respect each other's roles. So when you're given a role, basically what we're saying is do it really well so we can play together, right? And it's as you move up levels, it's just really really important to really sort to understand that, because it's very evident. There's some younger guys in the OHL right now that I watched in Oshawa the other day. And there's a Seneki is his last name, or Senak or whatever, and just slick, just like soft, like he makes plays really really well. Nice little sauce pass right into the play, right onto the tape for goal scoring, and it's like that's special. I'm not saying but that guy. It's like you have to. Someone can work their life. They don't have that. But then on the flip side, he doesn't have that grit, that hard nosed thing that's going to make a difference in the corners. So respect that player. Now, so for that kid to play to be good, he's got to continue to do that. And then, of course, you can work on your other skills and stuff. But this is what you're special at. Like on Guelph, Matty Patras, he can hang on to a puck and have patience, and he gets assists coming out of his ass. He's a playmaker, man. So to go ask him to go and crash and bang and do other, no. There's other guys that are going to do that. So now what happens is someone else goes out there and bangs a little bit. So what are you going to do? Is you take a passer and you put him with three other passers, or do you put him with a guy that can shoot? And that's basically what happens on that line. And then you get someone that's going to go do the work for them. It's like, now you got a thing of beauty. But the thing is that the grinder that wants to be to do the job of that guy, it's like, it doesn't work, man. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, this is where the
you'll
coaching,
get your rewards, but
this is where the coaching and parenting part comes in too, right? Because a lot of times kids aren't directed in that when they're young, and that's why we always go back to our, being able to identify your 2, 3, 4 things that you're really good at, because then you can establish yourself into more of a role. And that, again, that doesn't mean you're limiting yourself to, if you have an open lane, not take it because you're a grinder and dump it in instead. That's just stupid. But generally speaking, when you play the game, you do a few things well, and that's how you can come up with a team kind of setup, right? On a line, whether it's on a line or on a team. And that's where the coaches are supposed to be. Because I can't tell you how many coaches I had where there would be a kid that, I have one guy that I'm thinking about in particular that could just score, man. He could just score. And it was ridiculous. Like, I couldn't believe, same kind of thing, just super slick, would not touch a body, wouldn't touch anybody. And instead of using him where he's strong, because now he's 17, 18, 19, 20, there's not going to be, like, that's a pretty dense skull now, right? We're not going to do a lot of change for that type of player. Why not play to his strength? Don't expect something of him that he, not only is he not good at, he doesn't want to do, right? And this is where the coaching stuff comes in, because I can't tell you how many coaches would be reaming him about not finishing hits, and to a certain degree, right? To a certain degree, it's like you have to be able to do things you don't want to do. You got to help your team. I get that. But why are we putting this guy in a position to not be successful? So if we take the guy you're talking about from Oshawa, we say, okay, your job is crash and bang. Well, for him, it's like
finish every hit and block every shot.
I don't,
and you should.
Yeah, you should, right?
But
from the coaching perspective, it's, if you're going to ask him to do this, maybe also toss him a bone in the way that he's going to be successful, especially when you're a young guy. You play junior college, whatever, and there's 4 lines. So they have their power play set already. If you're a rookie, they already have their power play. Unless you're a standout recruit that is going to skip the line, for the most part, you got to wait your turn. And that can be really, really frustrating if you want to be a guy that scores or whatever. And that needs to be communicated to players. And as the player, you need to understand that is the dynamic, right? So find something else that you can do that's useful in the meantime, while also developing that other thing. And that's where that coach player relationship is really important. You have to be able to communicate that with each other both ways, you know?
100%. So yeah, so you can see it as you move up levels. Like some guys don't because they're just head and shoulders above like skill as far as the skill goes, and they distribute pucks and they just do things really well. So that's probably the guy that's what you're always going to be. But you'll notice as you get up to levels that, oh, it's not as easy anymore, or it's, oh, I'm not that guy anymore. Like I'm having a hard time scoring. Well, there's the first indicator. I'm using goal scoring as the thing, right? Or maybe you were the grinder in youth hockey, and then you get to, as you start getting up the ladder in AAA and maybe Junior B, whatever, you realize, oh, this isn't as easy. I'm not the grinder. Like there's indicators, right? So, but it's really really important to understand that on every team, there's only so many guys that can score goals. There's only so many high end guys, and there's only so many guys that are grinders or whatever. So, um, yeah, there's only so many ultra talented guys on a team. So then now you have to have um, goal scorers, but then you have to offset that with playmakers, and you have to offset that with the grinders, right? You have the offensive D, but you have to have the shutdown D, and you have to have guys that can do face-offs and penalty kill and playoffs. You can't do it all. So, like as a parent or as a kid, when you notice that, like find those. That's why it's really important as coaches and parents to find those little things that a kid does well. So if you see a D, you're playing D, and every time someone comes down, he just knocks the puck away every time. It's like you emphasize that, say that's you really have a really good strength there because that's something that's not getting a lot of glory a lot of the time. But if that happens all the time, and you really now he's aware that he no one scores on me because I'm good at that. So that's a really good role to play, and you want to take that, embrace it, and be the best at it. That's an asset.
Right.
That's a huge asset. So
I just got one with
yeah,
that is this kind of goes back to what you mentioned earlier about competing versus complementing guys on your team. So for example, and it also kind of plays into the your success in with the team success, right? They don't have to be something that it's one or the other. So if you got a guy on your team, for example, who is the playmaker, and especially when you're young, maybe he scores a bunch too, but he's more of a playmaker. He's more of a passing kind of guy, make a play, open up space. Well, if you see that, if he's the centerman, and let's say I also play center at the time, and instead of me thinking, okay, I have to do what he does better than him so that I get more opportunity than he does, instead you could be like, well, this guy doesn't have a shooter on his line, or he's got two guys on him everywhere he goes. Maybe he needs someone in there to crash and bang a little bit to get some space. Like you can identify something you can do to now be with that guy where you can have a little bit of a synergy because you're filling in each other's gaps, as opposed to thinking I need to outcompete this guy on my team, because there's an element of that inner team competition between
and
guys.
there should be,
Right?
100%.
That's not a
Everybody wants to be on the first line, get the most ice, get the power play, get the
Yeah.
PK, and take faceoffs and get the important minutes. Every single guy.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily an unhealthy thing to have.
No.
But instead of trying to go against the grain and say, I'm going to out playmake the playmaker, well, maybe you could become a much better shooter. And you could start this even when you're a kid, when you're not sure what you're good at, right? If you play with a guy that just has that little bit of a natural ability to throw a sauce pass that's really good, or this guy can really rip the puck, maybe you can start focusing on, how do I get this guy the puck so he can shoot?
100%.
Or
That's
how
what I
can,
was trying to say
yeah,
earlier.
right? Or how can I be the guy that's open for the shot? And then maybe now at home you're practicing your shot over and over and over because you know this guy's going to pass to you. This guy's given you 4 passes last weekend and you didn't score one of them when you're in a prime time spot because your shot's not good enough. Develop yourself into a shooter. You know, there's ways to do this where it's your success and it's the team success now. It's not just me, or I have to outcompete this guy to be better for me, you know?
100%. Yeah, and that's why you take your individual skills, you work on everything because you never know who you're going to play with.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know if I'm playing with Joe Thornton or a Matt Patras in Guelph, my stick's on the ice, I'm ready to shoot because he's coming. At some point, he's coming. You know, he's setting you up, and he's got such good vision, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, anyways, what I would suggest for players and parents to do to work together is to be success and to have a successful team. Learn what the team needs from you. Pride aside, Learn what the team needs to do, needs from you, so that you guys can succeed. Because if the team succeeds and you're contributing to that, then you succeed. And embrace it. So if I'm told I want to, you're going to be, we need you to be a shutdown forward, and all right, and understand why, and embrace it and be great at it, because that transfers, right? Like, you could always go the other way if you're asked to, but embrace it and do the job extremely well, and know that you're contributing to the team. So I know for some parents it might be hard because, well, yeah, but I want them to get the goals and stuff, but just help your son embrace that challenge of being great at what they
Trust
do.
the process a little.
Yeah. And does this mean, if you're like a total team guy, that you can't be the goal scorer ever? If you at some point you're given a certain role, that doesn't mean that. Does it mean you'll never be on the power play or the PK because you haven't done it early? No. And what I want people to look at is, and we've said this so many times, there's great players that make 11, $12 million a year, and their names are Crosby, McDavid, Matthews, and you go on with that. Those are real special guys. And then after that, you got guys that have really long careers because they can do things really well. Tom Wilson, the Foligno brothers. Like, people don't sit there and say, "Who's your favorite player?" Folignos. That doesn't come up that often, right? Marcus Foligno and Nick Foligno. But they play two-way game. They're rough. They're tough. They play a role, and they're playing for a very, very long time. The Nick Pauls of the world, he's probably sitting at 15 goals, 12, 15, 17 goals this year, but every team wants him because he's that guy on the third line that's going to make, playing for a long time, making money. The Killorn. Yeah. What about D, right? Like, remember McDonough when he was playing for Tampa, like, without, is it Ryan McDonough? I think so.
Yeah, Ryan McDonough.
Whatever.
Yep.
Without him, that team he's just a hard guy to play against. It's a shutdown role that's tough. It's like, it's critical, man. If you don't have that guy, you don't win. And the guys on the team look at him as like, we need you so badly, man. You're doing the things that no one else is willing to do or can do that well. What about Chris Tanev? When he was out, the team was in a tailspin. It's like, he's so important to that team. So it's not the glory guy, but they're sitting there making, in the NHL level anyways, making $3, $4, or $5 million in that area for 10, 12 years. That's a good living, man. That's a really good living.